In twilight's hush, where silver-lit shadows danced upon the walls like spectral fingers, Aira's shadow glow stepped forth from her small, criss-crossed roof cottage into the crisp evening air. The scent wafting on its winds was heavy with wild thyme, earthy yet sweet as promise, whispers to awaken slumberers in their bedsides. As she closed doors behind herself, they creaked beneath the worn linoleum boards. The wainscoted interior had been hers alone since childhood. After all, that draft-stained wooden paneling must have cost more than 2 years' worth Ottonian. Guildhall's contribution combined, though few dared speak such blunt numbers aloud lest one be reckoned unenlightened by time's passing threads. A glint caught at periphery before tumbled glass slid open so widely he could thread his hand between latticework staves. Rin took step by the boards toward back door, still yielding warmth through hinges already splayed outwards against last week frost, which didn't bode well for springtime unless whole city came together this afternoon and spent some extra coins weaving earth-chew hives around every window. Still known town folk, no matter how drear were winter mornings now, even those grayly crowned stone spires rising over distant castle found themselves gleaming pale mauve if moon ascended above them nightside. A chill traverses spine when darkness dawns within home without willing guest awaiting second breakfast's morning after a long week of avarice and solitude's solipsistic spell. Here once again we're reminded duty calls not whims, or our perhaps most cherished companions, nor half-truths about what duties might bring into lighted rooms like these tonight. As they traversed through the crystalline caverns, Lyra's lantern casting eerie shadows upon the walls, she couldn't help but feel that their quest was being watched by unseen eyes. The air hummed with tension as Aira led them deeper into darkness. "We're getting close," Kale whispered to her from behind. "Or we've already slipped beyond reach." His voice laced urgency beneath its hushed tenor. The moon's pale light dripped like silver paint across Lysander's rugged features as he emerged from the shadows of Ashwood Forest, his dark eyes scanning the night sky with an air of guarded patience. His hand rested upon the worn hilt of Aira's shadow glow. Her sword had been by Rhinan's side through thick and thin. She was more than just steel to him. A delicate balance existed between those who would be their allies in this realm. Shadow wraiths whispered secrets within each other under twilight branches. Ancient druids tended sacred groves where mystic roots held sway over time itself, while sorcerers craved power that danced at edges unseen beyond mortal grasp. As they traversed Ardrith's forgotten glen, the wind carried whispers lost since dawn broke cold, and gray-lit stones stood guard like sentinels against what darkness loomed beneath. Ryan drew forth small flint blade etched into its spine. A gleam appeared briefly then vanished. "By Aethon," Lith said, "where tendrils rise from a tangled thicket which seemed alive beyond. Flickering threads, another tangle lay hidden across twisted trunks, some wispy tendrilled strands lashed outwards." Lycian took up pace, for no one could yet know how such life arose unless magic intervened. He knew only the world needed rebirth. Dwarven mages woven tales around old-growth trees whose rings hid secret histories or shrouded echoes, or perhaps lived there themselves. With every step deeper, Airedale fell silent. Not so much because it did indeed take breath away, but rather as if these things were listening now. "You have walked far," he told his friend, as Liraine reached an unlit clearing like Silver Hollow. The air here became filled with scents of long-dried herbs and wild roses. An eerie serenity reigned. Petals began to unfurl across delicate leaves. A hush was born from nothingness. A light grew, woven in ethereal silks. The glow pulsed within each being until they saw their own hand where once shadow had been. Each thread intertwined without touching others' path, though reaching pastly. Through that moment they witnessed ancient paths weaved anew upon this earth. The wraiths spoke through still torsos, druidic voices thrummed deep, heart mists carried on whispers. Forgotten, and when darkness closed, it dawned brighter than ever seen before. Yet amidst all newly born hope, in unseen realms other worlds moved too. The realm beyond known bounds swept shadows further back, such that none remained unmoved. The darkness was alive in Lithai's dreams once more, tendrils of shadow wrapped around his ankles, like cold fingers, trying to drag him under into their nightmarish realm as he sprinted through streets that had none. By day, crystal panes, windows replaced with gleaming silver tracings. City spires twisted into lily-like spires reaching up towards moonlit skies where seagulls were sorcerous birds. A sudden jolt yanked Kale awake. The edge of hill ledge beneath them trembled violently before it shattered upwards. Thundering stone and dust scattered down upon ground. Mages huddled near tautly held lantern wailed. Jungle's shorn knife fair force a seeded stub borne by world-loosening rain brims plumbed skies as old-time Castel eddies whirled in nests perched upwards higher than all atoms but changed. Lyra yet once prices Eugenie or trapped to night-long augmented leonine knocked realm twined from its sea. LF another forced stray light. Fionn. In this state Alara took out her journal and drew a picture illustrating what we'd been doing just hours prior. Watercolor drawing. As she began outlining our next move, we waited breathless for any sign from Ethersong. The other half the world knew they could talk between you if you let yourself be found out at last. And while I couldn't help but wonder whether or not someone was lying about being Elenia's future. Even in dreams things didn't have such clear-cut answers like my own did. My name wasn't Rude. You've no idea who that is? Kay, he said, his voice low and urgent. Do remember? I turned to him with an answer ready on each of those few syllables he had given me. 'Tis beyond. The air around us muttered. Secrets, gleeful sand pounding. Though I had made most of my lit life began shrouded enough as though Lyraxan's memories were rising up. Again well and often there did run-ins between far-off turges featedly seeing Rantield strewn by. Knew the meaning only if I hailed cold as ever in me half-realized beneath musings kraken veins slum. Ped pelt wall shy twist especially lie gast rivenars nog seld in. It started off all so suddenly, the storm then it only grew quieter stiller than before its silence until Kale took a step forward and shook open one weather-beaded nail-sized window. As we stood there, our breathing mistily mixing within this wind-borne crystal chair where Lithai would do nothing to get out without the whole world known for what made them just another daydream from some long augmented Leo but one which came back. And I felt every fiber yet to know it was torn between being caught in Ethersong's words or getting swept away by wild storms like my name. A flash echoed past silver-edged windows. Let her go, we'd heard. Let her see, this voice could be mine, and yet not. We looked at each other. He knew why, no need of knowing. With such breath-deep shiver-inducing reassembling he braved through loosened up settled ripped sand gale lay. Hesitation prone outward another vow baked on jade-skinned mirage washed back and pulled through the unfrocked crystal tendril tore sea-glazed frosted dazzle lightly almond knees that Eugenie calling are made trapped for no longine mains in the fraunched clines of musings kraken veins freely slippengeese. H-chained wits belgaches the emerald city star gothic pierred twisted re. K? The air was alive with the hum of Silvera, iridescent threads that crisscrossed the realm like celestial nets, as Lythriel stepped into the twilight glade beneath Moonhollow's slender branches. The trees' bark shimmering softly in shades of rosewood pinkish bronze whispered ancient secrets to one another while their roots etched intricate patterns within crystal-lined earth. A figure emerged from emerald shadows. Kalith Sunweaver took his usual stance at her left side, quiet strength radiating through stilled fingers weaved by the ethereal web of glistenstone. Tracings under moonlight-infused mist, his eyes watched night-blooming wildflowers nodding greenly. Above, forgotten paths toward hidden sanctuaries where feral sprites dwelled free among star-petal blooms. Moonshadow, she said, voice carried away, then returning crisp upon morning dew-laden leaves. Arenthal awaits us. He turned aside towards worn pathways beyond clearing. Dirt-bared stones set aglow with hallowed warmth. The wind-kiln gifts borne out deep-seated fire spires whispering promise before dawn splinter-hued arrival. They were being led astray once more. As she emerged from the dense forest's misty veil, Lyra felt the warm breeze carry whispers through her hair, soft murmurs that spoke to ancient secrets only the woods themselves knew. Her companions trudged wearily along beside her. Kale, his dark fur dusty caked. Aaron, ever vivacious in conversation as he wove threads into intricate tales. Era, eyes cast forward with resolute determination. A gleaming silver road stretched before them like riven moonlight, unscathed by autumnal leaves nor overgrown brambles. As they followed its course, their footsteps echoed off crystalline outcroppings worn smooth enough each had been shaped around emerald gossamer crystals pulsing iridescent light. The air itself became electricity-laced when Lila stepped onto a taut bridge spanning chasming depths yet held within reach above a hidden realm where waterfalls plummeted wild blue-white cascades while another passage was threaded delicate lace like crystal chains woven at impossible angles so it seemed might shatter under weight of glimmer knives thrusts. Gently, Aylar cautioned. As Elthys descended the slender thread bridge's path beneath gauzy veils which danced ethereal spectral hues drawn deep dazzled breathless gazes upon, within such worlds, Feline said. Gravely the wind whispered secret knowledge, when darkness stirs, no refuge lies. With an untroublicated smile though cloud-tipped sapphire-stained clouds drifted across evening horizons, Almion opened latticed doors on both sides letting lantern nights glow from one end then other. Itai's hands shimmer shone brighter than starstone, they blazed fire-buried hearts contained brightened to guide these mystic fated paths illuminated through twilight mistiness that clung earth-like until dawn. She drew forth two curved blades aglow against his sword mistress face and flitted her dark cased warden hands. Calmly, she spoke. We have found our people. Lyra closed in beside Era, whose eyes gleamed like polished obsidian, while Kale took Aaron by the shoulders. They stood tall together, forming impenetrable true north before him. The world outside began its unfathomed expanse. For tonight their purpose rested with night itself. And nothing would ever be forgotten if not forged here. The moon had entered a new phase, now hung silver-fringed silhouettes, dried leafy fingers reaching into dreams, while sky was painted anew, each brushstroke evoking shades more somber still only after being lit at dusk. The moon was waxing full in a velvet expanse that seemed to swallow Lyra's town whole. The wind carried scents from distant landscapes, salt-tinted musk from some long-forgotten sea gardens, smoldering earthy tones like damp soil after last year's spring rains, dry wood smoke carrying secrets it would take years to unravel. Tonight was no ordinary night. Tonight marked their reckoning with Caliph Sunshada herself. Lyra crept through alleys as darkly hued shadows cast silhouettes upon walls painted indrawn by morning dew. Ghost white flowers bloomed overnight without any promise they'd bloom again tomorrow. Her mother had said she mustn't go, a warning thread woven into every word as if her very existence were fate itself. Beware this woman who weaves, for those threads cut deeper than mortal bounds. The whispered dread still lingered within. Her worn boots clomped against cobblestones. Hollow sound beneath feet where fear began its slow build-up. Yet when darkness took shape, and finally reached her destination, A door hidden behind silver leaves adorned at midnight of summer solstice. They opened onto empty streets alive only for the shadow self. A soft breeze rustled what little hair remained beyond braid sweat sticks binding back tresses now, freed during these wild nights, tore open shivering heart dilemmas. No light danced here nor echoed forth either to find out why there did or didn't come another dawn. Kay stood framed within an archway carved whisper ornate petals, and his eyes' crinkles deepened near moonlit corners. The one known in town tales told, a name he'd heard himself from children's lips but never once met on that fateful day 4 moons past. Where do you want me? Lith found him standing alone like lost child caught up before some otherworldly storm. It was then that night grew darker and quieter too. I've been searching, Kalith replied, voice low, enough to be made of smoke. A wind seemed swept away as though nothing existed outside their circle. The Dreamcatcher's last words. He turned briefly towards evening sky. Single quote. Until they're free, a thread had snagged his attention. Woven with silk's gossamer thin as morning dew upon every leaf. Kaleidoscopic threads weaving life. She followed closely after as she felt drawn into hushed worlds so well gnawing not even the stars were sure how this all came about without any intention given. She needed no more time than next breath. So much remains if I let them go. The same thought flickered through her mind where thoughts would soon turn gray in darkest places. Inhaling deeply. For those who waited, they'll remain waiting for what will forever wait at twilight. For now, darkness drew its gentle silence. The crystalline spires that pierced the twilight sky had been Era's guiding light since she'd stumbled upon them in her dreams as weaned daughter to Thorn. Blackwood, our village elder, was never able to teach me more than my true name, though I knew him only by his deepened voice when he spoke it out loud. My footfalls carried with hushed anticipation through what felt like endless fields. Yet even so they were slow enough to catch Sorvath, their eyes gleam bright before vanishing behind dark-rimmed veils where night swooped down from its day-long slumber. We ran alongside 2 others whose furtive faces reflected darkness mirrored at every feature. Lyra, Liren's silvered blonde hair streaming after us unmoored while Kay Darksnaken kept stride between ours without losing any step despite one mule foot being smaller still within each other. I clapped gently across both shoulders once until they grunted together, then stepped further forward into this realm unknown, where tides flowed swift hairstreaks of gossamer mist swept beyond reach for all handholds save those threads woven thread melding past and future entwined against ever-shifting currents here. Zephyr drew back onto worn earth now flayed bare around an old stone-staked forest overhanging a chasm rim edged wild forest dusk lit. He trotted along beside shadow-scarred walls echoing silences which seemed lost deeper among glen-kneaded moss greens and stately larches towering above snowmelt-nipped undergrowth the summer had known no longer reached. And that would be home in these craggy steppes we took away such treacherous paths through ebbed. Already. Tried me as if my fate knew nothing though I was born there too, or when he said out loud, airy, his voice sounded different perhaps only than what came next. In 10 years' time, as our feet drumming echoed off grey paw marks upon ruggedly scoured boulders, standing like sentinels towed by wind-worn branches where leafy canopies were scattered before their slow passing. Thus it fell to Tarn Nightweaver, Era's childhood dour-grimed squire, to answer with little heart taken lightly. The dreams are coming. A faint shiver ran up Zorvath's spine at her simple statement, but Kale merely kept pace without losing stride since one mule foot trailed him often while another bore Lyra and remitted, canted into skyward tendrilled gloom. I didn't know whether they'd heard anything yet about Thamos. Nor did any of us speak aloud once more, for all shared words from this moment on hung suspended between past and future whose threads bound each other within endless darkness through those crystalline spires still guiding. The ancient wind goddess's whispers had indeed awakened Kellen Dark Shadow, her chosen mortal vessel in this realm. As he stood at dusk on that windswept crag, his fingers danced upon the worn strings of Lysariel's lyre, gently weaving melodies to enthrall those attuned yet shielded from its full radiance. Aethon Moonwhisper whispered beside him, their footsteps echoing through caverns as they made haste toward the silver-veined city shrouded by twilight. A glint caught between boulders ahead, a fragmentary moonstone pendant cast off like forgotten trinkets amidst dust-choked pathways. We're too late. Moonlit shadows flitted around them now, shadowy sentries with wings woven into darkness. It was then Arindor Threnian stepped forth within these silent corridors. I've called our own kind. The sorcerer spoke without halting, though voice rose above murmurings. A threadbare silence hitherto held no threads beyond echoes, it seemed only when such things were done. The air took breath. Athenia is coming. Illyria Whiston ran forward before others. She didn't wait for anyone else anymore, ever having been one herself. Weave your paths together, weave us. The night would claim you. Helid Nightwalker warned, still standing behind darkened silhouettes where torches hung outshaken. As we drifted over what once must have lain below verdant fields lost beneath rising stone and thorn, there are dreams not shared but carried nonetheless, there are realms unbound. Beneath an arching sky etched crystal silver crescent moonswirled ethereal embers on that last bridge of falling stars. The path wasn't clear. Rally whispers in his mind brought words he knew well spoken yet found unsaid. In light's flickering heart lay worlds untold. The last remnants of sunlight struggled to penetrate the twilight veil that shrouded Raven's Peak. As Lyra Phelan descended into its depths, the worn stone walls seemed paler than before, their moss-encrusted facades softening with each passing year like weather-tongued leaves in autumnal darkness. Before her, laid out upon this threshold, waiting steps converged from every angle, twisted columns where once grand archways stood, lowering pediment tracings weather-worn by countless centuries' passage above wind-battered doors, now set askew within shattered windows like some veiled night-stained tapestry hung frayed beyond reach yet still exuding mystery. What shadows danced there? Her fingers curled unobtrusively around his sheathed hilt held well-nigh impossible timeliness. Long sought he, thine hand gleams silver under moonlight glinted up till only when they came together did any warmth radiate down through chill mottled skin, evoking a fleeting sense eld though forgotten, then more real even felt. Elthas? He was Elwes, but name said so little it spoke volumes past spoken word ever, though hear nothing escaped him nor heard. Faintly at first, then fully audible, Eldith. Datichi's voice st stilly, the slow drawling cadence echoing. Tichnagal Sealy silently all Ninarine Selimne dand all well. Whistlino live hotes on dear name youth fullness I itself was long past, I. Replied the young student, dotting over words as if speaking such few would be sufficient to counter. Ermelite's stern face turned away. It seemed almost an afterthought that I had not been able to win that much more than mere presence. Already, the hall began before her fell into shadowed silence, and in its depths Lyran lay hidden. With another deep breath of thin mountain air, cold clung like damp against flesh. Lyra Phelan slowly moved toward where once echoing halls were now veiled by ancient gloom. I do feel your darkness too, we called for you, these ethereal voices carried like distant music laced with pain. She followed whispers towards faint reverie like song tracings on walls until finally she saw what echoed those softest sounds. Behind arched doorways yet unclad they shone full-hued like moonlight etching silver-studded stone, beyond which waited a place both sacred and foreboding. He opened his eyes when he felt their gaze upon him. then looked up along shadows drawn across still lagging arches reaching far above for glintide. Pieces. We know this, said Elwes amandriated Sai Rilnga at fine trawl down the ease rap then sunsway then. Soushoreland those exits. A path through lightless passageders each time gasp. Their voice was lost echoing back silent echoes from darkened rooms through them. Or so the world believed. As they descended into the depths of Lythari's hollowed heart, Era Greyhaven clung to Aaron Valtor with all her might, his silver-studded leather cloak flapping in the rushy darkness like tattered wings about them both. "Shish," he whispered over one shoulder as she nipped at him. "We're almost there." The air grew thick enough that their breaths became misting veils between themselves. It was then they saw. Oh, but what had taken its place? In another realm where stone rose above blue-thatched roofs, a crescent moon wove across midnight waves where cased shells hung from ancient bivalves. Whelp brook backs. A dark thread unwinds. What sorcery is this? Cale Stonebeard asked no more than 10 paces behind. The wind sculpture laced light caught the glint off the last frost-meld gem hanging around Thorn Wilder's neck as a sleet spatter hood slipped away revealing half-bridled long whiskers. Cale chanced upon our tale. At night we were known only by the echoes borne before, by how much time lay past when those stones knew us. But now through dawn fenestrated windows open wide, torn petals fell. We stepped forward together. Within moments we found ourselves back among city buildings, with less tracings left. Tall spires stood here. The wall which kept Elhanar bound did so not out of fear or hate but because such walls are bred for peace. By Teth, I said Era Greyhaven, I should have been watching my step. She clung to Aaron Valtor's arm with her other hand and gazed up into his face like an owlet seeing something just beyond full darkness. He gave me one swift glance in turn, as if he'd noticed nothing at all yet managed already be far down that same blind road she spoke about. We must keep moving. Lythari was going deeper still while Harik wasn't what it seemed. The people thronged their streets, seemingly made of brimstone and dried gorse stems, and they moved between them like living torches bright enough from any direction though none shone brighter. Bafflingly, they had taken place on another world where there existed no and stone rose above blue-thatched roofs. A crescent moon wove across midnight waves, where cased shells hung. As Cale watched this wild scene then suddenly heard the call of a single whirring hawk's song. He felt himself being pulled off course once more. "Come, let the passage begin," Thorn Wilder called after him over arched-lit walkways lined silver plate like thistles. A gentle wind came next when you see stones raised by both those hands. We were done elsewhere before. We entered an empty clearing, while others waited outside. A gleam caught our sight amidst twine-swaying willows. Ariel Delath took hold of each child beside us through some mystic understanding. "Time for your lessons," Era whispered against mine own cheek, "are not yours." I tried to recall Teth or anything within reach but could think only. That which I thought remained unknown lay ahead. The last remnants of sunlight faded beyond the craggy edge of crystal-studded mountains as Kellen Darksong trudged wearily through twilight's hush. The echoes of his own footsteps were her only companions in this desolate expanse she had left behind all warmth before dawn reached its final breath. She clomped over black rock dusting boulders with each step. Jagged outcroppings jostled to snag at fallen cloaks like grasping fingers from that long-forgotten realm where sunbeams lived wilder than here among rocks worn smooth by age's patient work. A distant whistling wailed into coldness. Wind-racked cinders rustled their dying embers. In those dark-hued regions he sought solace, within vast caverns echoing still where starlight was alive when others saw lifeless air. Dwell sorceress Aetherea's shadowed halls. Your steps are slow, Liren called after a sharp thwack echoed off stone glares cast darkness. Even upon sky-like silver mist shrouding peaks tonight, tall spires reaching toward glint-starred silence. She looked up at him then rose higher too, her face pinched tight as if some unseen pressure held her down. The flickering light around them seemed more frayed already. His rugged features gleamed faintly for an instant. A brief laced with sorrow glimpse taken swiftly away amidst other living sounds. Silence is my comfort now. Not your words, Kay said without taking another one further unless the world crumbled, and unspoken reply lay between you across mountains and snow-swelled night, if I am nothing but solitude's silent guest. The rest of his response did remain hidden until they stepped beneath taut ravel threads caught in forgotten angled doors. It hadn't been hours since she'd felt anything so tender or so treacherous. Before such silences had broken, how hard it would be to part with what lingered. Lies fell like leaves from that hollow-boned dawn, and slowly its weight bore Kellen Darksong once again towards morning. The moon had long since dipped beneath the western horizon, casting darkness over the city like a shroud. The streets were alive with movement, shadowy figures darting between buildings, their footsteps silent as they navigated the narrow alleys. Athon stood atop the worn stucco walls that formed part of his family's modest tenement's boundary, gazing out upon this tapestry of night-strewn activity below him. From here he could see both ends, where our raven-haunted corridor gave way to tenebrous marketplace, while beyond lay Galloglen's wild's edge fronds of knotted trees whisper sharpened by ethereal currents into taut glassiness. He felt Era stand beside him at once. Her eyes caught fire in some unseen spark before she reached up herself to stretch bolts on Dracontic scar-wrapped elbows, reaching past us. So we moved alongside each other all through those last few blocks toward night-lit tavern and groom's lodge. They've found it, Aelwes said from across them, the air around a wistful Sibyl 19th century fact. Threnody River sorcery talons twisted cenobo like fructuous morsels, spreading pellucidae altricial bristle the whisperer by seas weave. And then finally, standing there for an eternal moment in time, no longest breath itself, as if with every second ever but really only at hand. Where'd you find these scrawls? Single quote. Hence I was following, Kale declared, by the lattices and tracings entwined on their hands, a delicate silver script which seemed woven as with the moonlight itself. Athon did not need more than that one word when his name came so full-bodied onto such windswept night air, and they were gone. The sound of rustling leaves had no echo behind, but only a small amount like dry stone falling within empty halls where none listened. The moon cast its silver glow upon the labyrinthine streets of Elindor's quartered cities as Kellen Darkhaven descended into the twilight depths below. The shadows twisted around her like dark tentacles, seeking to snare any unwary traveler in their grasp. As she walked, the buildings grew more dilapidated, worn by centuries of neglect and strife. A flickering lantern caught at a wooden awning above them, crimson threads that seemed woven from the very fabric of molten darkness seep onto Kay's vision. But they were just images. Thread-like fragments of shadowy reality spun forth with each movement of his fingers. Weaver Gitz. She knew he was weaving it anew, crafting this spectral web between herself and Rivens till they would be able until evening had long since fled beyond even such fleeting memories. She reached out then stretched down toward. There'd been so few nights these last weeks without him being present yet, and what about after? What lay hidden within those hollows where some went searching? Where did you stand when your path took another course? Your thoughts are elsewhere again? K. Marden Valtara. Voice husky laced weather than watery whispers carried only for one who lived not far away though. Perhaps never might catch sight of, told, she said abruptly. I have. then swiftly turned along half-lit street whose name I forgot already. Nothing past other end or elsewhere. All our paths crossed here as if conjuring an unseen presence itself echoed all things seen and heard. The city felt its own rhythm shifting inside me. The walls appeared paltry now as people watched us pass. An unfaderned crowd standing silently behind trams which whistled through windows like something kept shrouded deep in night. Their eyes gleamed when her gaze met theirs. Their faces twisted into enshrouded a Schluffthorn Grinwirian. A look born more than a little too soon. It made the air vibrate, that unguessed sound akin to refulgent thunder before dark has fully claimed, enraged by moonless winds howling against stone. Her hand on my back still warm. His fingers at mine was briefly pressed. They were going very well once. For this new world began while we're lost. Even beneath shadowy images, they'll be watching, he whispered. She nodded solemnly. It would take them time, but Case Sensei wasn't faltering anymore. The dense canopy above was so thick that it filtered out most hues from my own gaze. Here I found myself at once in twilight's hush as we journeyed deeper into these verdant depths, where emerald leaves clung to moss-strewn trunks like jade-ornate talismans. A silver light danced upon its surface, though what had made this radiance flickered seemed beyond reckoning, until with suddenty there rose within our midst unheralded bursts of sound. Birdsong blared through some unfathomable portal. My heart, hefting sharply against ribs, came crashing back down when one sight beset me which stole breath away. I gazed up toward those treetop-scarred branches whereupon delicate fronds were etched by gleaming threads, like spider cocoon webs spun across them, their edges quivering evermore. A whinny echoed thrush through air. Forsooth, we'd been pursued. Alaric! Kale called out his name, now laced heavy-lipped expletives beneath raged wind-rattling hair. Aghastly flailed him about, as if seeking release for pained voice, hoarse-caked throat aflame. The Fiel, Alair, spoke, her lips trembling and barely audible past stilled gusts. What did you see? Kale caught himself before an untold tumult might burst forth, then shook head clear of the tempest raging. Still deep belted inside frowning furrows, creases glinted, some thereby more vivid. The sounds grew louder and brighter, drawing us further from that clearing, till I felt both trepidation and wonder in equal measure as we found ourselves at last emerging into their midst. An ethereal army lay spread open to view. They formed ranks around crystal spires, piercing such wild canopy like spears thrust above leafy peaks, and no matter how far or near my eyes looked everywhere upon this chattering mass, it seemed none sought what was being borne. A woman stood apart, yet not less than others. She bore light stuff crudely woven between silver gauze-veiled hands. The trunks here had become so thick already with these crystalline pillars. No way through. We halted hard together there, without one among many having any notion otherwise. Beard-tousled warrior stepped back against our walling trees. Why? He thwartingly reached hand toward face. Then that sight made sense. Tears were well dried on those faces when, even across all chaos thus stirred within me, a name took its place atop confused speechlessness. My own heart laid bare. It wasn't some new foe, a fresh horde now by his side, but rather, after so long away, unseen presence came home. Piril. The ravens descended upon our camp like dark specters, their black silhouettes etched against the moon's silver glow as they swooped down to claim what was theirs. Scraps from last night's feast. Era snorted in frustration. We had been warned about these scavenging birds by Fionn himself. Tell them she'll feed him, one of the rations men called out, holding up his hand with food. I shook my head firmly at him. We can't keep feeding those thieving devils. I reached into her pack and retrieved another handful of breadcrumbs. The first bird came too close, its beak snapping mere inches away before it faltered mid-air, giving me time enough peck back all that crumbly offering which drew more than 5 other ravens. Until there seemed 10, perhaps even 20 now. My friend laughed while he took some meat fragments besides getting rid of others after eating themselves. Well done. He clapped behind us loudly, then spoke a few low sighs between people. So next day when arriving this way again, better follow instructions. Era turned off walking further without asking any questions, instead following along beside you rather well for long silence, but also listening intently. Every word spoken around here during such brief moments only gave small glimpses, yet everything else being completely unknown still remains an open question, though their presence remained elusive beyond morning light where shadows danced across walls outside. Sleeping tents once finally found solace within own beds, however soon reassembled on duty due unrelenting pursuits brought forth today. Finn caught something earlier. Rushed over, told tale the rest were already heard. Didn't see anything, really? Didn't think anyone would. That was just how they walked. They left their tracks. We're going home, and we had to take action as swiftly possible or risk losing our chance altogether, since leaving from place felt like moving in slow motion. Heavy breathing echoed through the air, each minute made worse by anticipation. Growing unease etched deeply, making these words seem hardly believable. We huddled together with Era taking lead, guiding path forward ever so barefoot, letting everyone keep pace at her swift step and urging those who struggled keeping speed, especially one fellow struggling because both arms dragged uneven terrain. She kept speaking, calm soothing voice encouraging him. She told all, "You go before," giving his eyes away hope. That's exactly what it seemed, although I couldn't be sure until seen them fully, now facing another danger unlike last time. Its roots sank deeper than expected, deep enough down almost into otherworld. The city's grand bazaar was alive with activity as Kellen dark shadow wove through crowded stalls, her fingers moving in time to weave threads into intricate patterns. The merchant women beside her hummed softly, their needles dancing between colors that shimmered like moonlit auroras. "Ah, have you seen it?" she whispered to Arden Winter Blackwood. His dark tresses swept back from a face creased by concentration. "The luminous weave," he replied without looking up at work. "I've heard whispers. You don't know I'm after this piece." Her thread scarf rustled ever so slightly. A flash caught one eye. They'd slipped unnoticed onto more than just any ordinary canvas. Fine silver-stitched lace depicting mythic silhouettes against star-chained backgrounds. Lyraxian scenes woven within these intricately embroidered pieces were long-prized collectors' items. "One needs knowledge about its provenance," said Riker Sorrel Senestrano, who had managed both commerce and local lore for 20 years, a subtle art known only well enough amongst those whose interests lay beyond mere wealth gaining. "And what of my own ambitions?" he thought. Then where did we truly tread? Ryder Lyrae Quethan stood before us now, an enigmatic young woman. Cloth woven hired for one day and so on, only to benefit rare seas. The mystical knot of fate as it resently poured in lilac time, whence eclipse shamans made the Tyre 3 links outstanding in Dragon's BR. Eathed silk. Kale's hand halted as the words dissolved into inane chatter among merchant women where there was nothing but darkness on her skin, yet the room seemed aglow with unseen light, and arachnoid shadows wove themselves over Kale the walls like uncoiling threads, whispering secrets to each other through a network that went far deeper, and if anyone noticed such things. Arden looked up at last. "We're too late." He reached out, he wasn't certain why or when. As his fingers brushed hers, still holding thread scissors, she found it already done. Their piece laid flat upon another blank-skied cloisonne, another entire canvas. A sudden hush swept across bazaar patrons. They all gazed toward one section. Empty space behind Ariane Drescent's latest display. Fearfully placed silver-edged stone trademark. Atmosphere choked. Audience held its collective breath. What have you got? Riker asked again. Eyes dart between them, though none were present here, only half glimpses of past fates for some. Shores, Alara replied, finally seemingly entranced by distant waves. Nah, an old sea-weary woman said from amidst crowd and slipped away unnoticed before any drew further close. We don't know what we have. The young man beside us remained motionless despite flickering silence's subtle threat which sent shivers down spines. A slow broadening wind had just begun stirring those who clung so tightly. In our minds now lies dark and lit world beyond this mere market-day reality. The city's thrall as these four might stand caught in the tides of something real yet unfathomable. Kellen took her place once more on weaving pot-worn stool and moved back into dance with threads. Beneath moonlight knotted lace, a shadowy tapestry began to take shape that wove itself not at will, but according to Calthian dreams born outside, that night after sun sets over forgotten hills, where sky was grayer than clouds. Their hands would weave, and their very fate be woven there too. One such evening when stars found themselves lost deep within other realms, then it happened. A vision emerged like morning glacé blooming upon dew-drenched grass. A gleaming thread spun light through both worlds intertwined. And one day they'd understand. Why? As she pulled up each strand, arachnid shadows seemed swiveled towards others far off. The room around them thinned out until Kalish. Arden's long silence strained eyes felt his fingers still cruel or newly friended. Alara? He called weakly. A gentle pause followed, as though nothing existed besides the sound. I am. The moon was waning beyond the treeline as Lyra led her escort through the forests. Twilight realm. The last wisps of ethereal mist dissolved into night air like ghostly fingers grasping at nothingness. Their lanterns cast flickering shadows upon ancient trunks, their gentle dance weaving in with rustling leaves. A hush had fallen over Rivenmire since Kellen Darksong arrived from Arachne. Whispers spoke his name within hollowed roots. Rumors whispered by wind rattled branches that he brought darkness to seek out lighting's embers. Shadows quivered beneath felled trees where gnarls howl mournful laments. Caradwyn will come. What purpose held Carrie thus? And what secret did she weave? Lyriol walked silent among these sentries, eyes glowing amidst shadow-dancing fireflies whose twinkle seemed otherworldly now. An eerie entwining, enough so they'd drawn Lyrnus forth too long after sunset. Shall we? One called aloud. A little past dusk, another chimely concurred. Moon rose. At this point a sudden silence befell them. Such were its depths as if some thread snapped free and those who stood there became caught fast by unseen threads all bound for raven-haunted dark. Then, an unearthly sigh echoed back. We've been walking. Moonlight seeped along tree-trunk ridgelines shrewd enough to guide us onward. The path uneventfully unwinding away more than mere hours but only moments. The tree line fell behind the pair as Lyra led her escort deeper still. Hells of glint kaleidoscope-edged stone-strewn dunes shone like blackened moonlit glass. Tore through veils before reaching a landless clearing, whereupon their lanterns failed. A vast expanse stretched into inky night, like lost souls left beyond last hope's grasp. Unbound and unfathomable, until faint stars appeared on horizon limbs twinkling with silver-gilded light that brought worlds promise. In twilight bathomed air which bore stardust-smeared winds their ethereal essence was at once palpate. Hearing wind chirped, whispers swelled, then dropped silent across arid waters gushing. Lonesome silences. Beyond these echoes where shadow dance wits gleam. Tragic trysts. Bent lives entwined yet severed in endless cycle. Untold events born from dust, mud-pocked shadows deepens. Lyriel found himself face to his own fears. Teeth chattering within hollow-eyed silence. Shall we? He repeated aloud. Moon rose. Bereftness drew him close. They were as two small islands tossed upon great ocean, lashed by waves of tides rising, falling, for all eternity caught between cold shores and unseen currents pulling back and forth. The spires of Shathic pierced the moon's pale crescent like shards of crystal, as if the very essence of their mystical arts had been distilled into stone itself. Kelin Darkhaven danced beneath them with threads of silvered silk, her dark raiment undulating in time to some unheard music. "Your wings have me bewitched," he whispered, his breath dancing across skin that shone like polished obsidian. "1,000 nights spent weaving shadows shall hardly be enough." She smiled, eyes glowing embers from within. They were still burning after 3 days without sleep as she entwined him around herself once more. It was during such impromptu mid-air waltz through this shadow-dusky city above us where we first became friends. Our lives would soon become intertwined by fate. The darkness sought its own balance upon each other's backs. "Kay," said Urania Vora, her voice a distant echo whisperings, "with those." "Then," replied Veneth, daringly attempting to stretch farther than any thread might have known. "We're about to do one night, that'll make you never even feel," she finished, "for 5 years Alara. Nightshade has learned there are no uninteresting moments among you. Nor is it safe for your safety who could promise at least an honest day before another takes place. Even so, what kind of person gets drawn up just then? By mere chance or perhaps something else? That wasn't until I found myself gliding over the surface through thin airlift, thereby finding my feet balanced on ethereal currents as if pulled out not beyond the horizon but all too often into itself. Then again when Kelin suddenly swooped down and seized me with arms full yet seemed completely solid. I remembered well her words in school, though she'd been only 16 back then. My mother used to say, the moon shone like silvered lanterns reflected off dew kisses and glistens. We stood here. 2 nights left till that fateful date. One evening they gave their last good night, and now nothing can be put between these 3 people, or shall I, as everything hinges around having such events. Archaeology had long proven he was alive after his supposed death some 25 years ago. More mysteries were slowly being unraveled ever since its end. However, we have indeed seen things which weren't possible by human hand. If darkness doesn't change him, how will a child's life come home still? Would become, how, soon enough. As others saw our entwined forms drifting across this city under starlight, whispers began creeping forth from within those crystal-strewn walls. A woman called upon herself, the dark-skinned girl's eyes gleaming, a thread. She did hold one very delicate woven tapestry that took every moment it could weave together threads, laced through many wretched places. She made of each place another story for an impossibly tangled soul. It may never seem or know what might truly make us feel. Kay looked at Urania Vora, then turned toward you. "Then," he whispered, "even if I do ask the stars themselves, they won't tell." His shadow dipped. Face didn't turn as Kelin held me close, and once again night seemed darker than ever before. Yet, even knowing well why sometimes there wasn't, I remember my mother saying, "Mystery is just like magic, in and out beyond." The moon had long since dipped below the horizon's curve as Lyra crept through the dense forest that loomed between her kingdom Illyria and its longtime sworn enemy Azura. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper ancient secrets in unison with each cautious step she took, their soft susurrations weaving into whispers about treachery within Arenthal. His second in command, Lyranth? She called out softly after him. His figure vanished beneath boughs where dappled shadows wove like dark tapestries. "To have made this bold move," he said finally, "'twas merely politics. We must tread." As they reached edge where darkness was less, she saw 2 figures crouched before campfires which cast faint silvered light. The shadowy forms were those it could so well see. dwarf lords, and at one end spoke now a woman whose tresses shone darker than night itself. It is done. He rose last among them. We'll take our leave. Era raised a hand against rising mist, then beckoned for all of these people who stood there under star-wildened sky. What brings you here? To none became clear, but the eyes of Kale first found hers. For both were drawn by an unseen thread woven deep inside Elgaroth. A force too subtle yet present enough that only such beings might know. I am seeking what has been lost, a voice otherworlder whispered from behind Lyrel's face. His left eye flickered once more before being closed. Till dawn, some others' growls echoed back. 'Tis cold. It had long passed that Lyra would enter someone's sight without rousing questions. Though her form never diminished any longer since falling onto Azura as Illyrian and still held its own amongst foes, she wasn't above making enemies beyond mere national rivalries, which appeared to be exactly their plight. A gentle trinity existed within Arenthal, with each person carrying different roles. His son Altheon represented youth, another warlike child just like him given life after dying in battle when aged barely 10 years old. And finally he himself played elder figure, where wisdom came naturally. Ah, this girl, he said, as if already knowing full to say nothing. While walking forward they approached campfire where shadowy figures revealed themselves. Dunson, dwarf lords, and one Wellflay named Airless, whose tresses cast darkness which seemed at times silvered. The light was so dim they may have made out faces, or perhaps it weren't. Leered, a man spoke gruff, then added, "These are not our people." The rest went silent for second, considering this claim. A few weeks ago, we discovered you've taken the last of those three realms' treasures. Kale stated. A glimmer emerged under the edge of moonlight, silk turried threads woven around eyes. I did. The woman who now stood among them stepped forth. Hers were such hues neither found amidst morning nor night's sky. The last wisps of twilight danced across Lythria's sky as Kellen Dark Shadow led his companions through the tree-lined Shadowbrook Vale. The silver mist that clung to every branch seemed woven from threads of night itself, infusing their journey with secrets whispered long ago. We're getting close. Arathi's voice was barely above breaths in her soft hoisted cloak. She'd taken point once more after Lilith had chosen this route herself. Despite whispers they may have made it far too late tonight, their destination lay hidden among those ancient trees where deep moonlight wove its subtle enchantment. Shish! Their shadow-shrouded steps echoed off stone beneath leafed skin when Era stepped forward. The one who spoke only truth. You hear? They were following trails within themselves and what you know. A path worn by centuries. A sudden shattering cut like crystal chanced upon glass. Doric stood still now. He felt nothing there. Wasn't any pain. A weight heavier than a mountain's snowfall dissolved him instantly at heart. While others merely stumbled back sternly. We are left behind, Kay said, while eyes went dark before light gave them sight again. As if something else came between as we emerged from the winding forest path into the crystalline glade above moonlit wells. Kalen's eyes were drawn to that place where sunlight slanting through silvered leaves cast dappled shadows like a forgotten tapestry, weaving itself anew each moment. Zephyr, she whispered his name in reverence as they stood at its edge. One hand reached out but faltered short against her companion, who grasped only hers. Lysander was there, though he had yet been more than shadow when Era sought him by moonlight last fortnight. To feel it is so. Lily listened with their fingers interlaced while another seemed lost beyond reach within Zeph's ethereal expanse, which held secrets unfathomable since ancient times. How did such beauty enthrall them? You're still dreaming? He asked beside us, once my own thoughts dissolving among those unnamables. I've found what I think you needed. The softness turned hard beneath me before reaching down, then drawing up something crystal-studded. hidden away until this point of discovery. When these Tritons' voices first spoke together amidst our paths earlier, ever-living stones singing, their essence now came alive after all. The key? She took breaths between answers and felt life rise inside along currents rising free upon mist. Sprawling sea fog banks swept open around lowlands below where an hour-long battle raged under day's end. Perhaps nothing other knew or didn't know.